That's awesome. I love it.
Amazing, amazing.
So, hello and welcome to Beyond Pixels, where we meet the leading innovators and experts in metaverse marketing. Our goal? To help inform and educate brands and marketers as to the best practices in this ever evolving space. I'm Dan.
And I'm Nodo. Welcome to everybody. And today we are lucky and privileged to be discussing behind the scenes of Walmart's successful activation, Walmart Discovered. We already showed some teaser, and I'm very happy to having our amazing guests here and starting our show with this amazing episode, first show of the year.
Yeah, like Dodo said, this is our first Beyond Pixels episode for 2024, and it's a format that's actually brand new for us. It's a deep dive case study, and based on who is watching our show, we think this is going to be very informative and educational for them because so many of them are just planning and delving into their very first metaverse activations.
And I'm very, very excited and also want to wish you Happy New Year since it's like still we are in the January. And wish you all the happiness, all our listeners. And as Dan mentioned, I'm very happy we have this opportunity to discuss behind the scenes. And many, many listeners will be interesting to uncover what's going to be shared during the show.
So let's start by meeting all these other people that you're seeing on your screen right now. I'm going to start by welcoming Nic Hill, who is the co-founder and head of interactive at Sawhorse Productions. Firstly, Nic, thanks for all your help in getting this panel together. It wouldn't have happened without you, so thanks a lot. And
Thank
also, thanks for the really cool video that you did on your 2024 Metaverse prediction. We've gotten like so many comments on our social media platforms. We had invited Nic to our December show where we were doing like a look back at 2023 and then 2024 predictions. Nic couldn't make it, so he made a video, and it's really awesome. So thanks again for doing that. So the next thing, Nic, I have to ask you this. Every time I go onto LinkedIn, I see Sawbridge doing another activation. Do you ever sleep? I mean, it's amazing. But so that everybody that's watching can kind of get an understanding of Sawbridge, can you give us a little bit of a background of Sawbridge? And contextually, so that during the show people will know what you and Sawbridge does.
Sure. I'll give a quick recap. So Sawhorse Productions, we started as a traditional...
Sawhorse, I am so sorry.
No worries. Yeah. The company is Sawhorse. We've been around for about 13 years. We started as a traditional production company, so building 2D linear video in the digital space for studios, brands, and agencies. And just in the past 3 years, we moved into the interactive space and the innovation space with a huge focus on Roblox. So instead of just doing 2D linear storytelling for our clients, now we're doing 3D immersive gamified world building, which has been awesome and such a great opportunity. And I would say 90% of our work is all on Roblox, mainly because it's the platform that has the most traction, the most users. And when you say like Metaverse, I feel like it's the most successful, most realistic platform to be on at the moment.
Wow, that's amazing, Nic. And I'm sure your knowledge and expertise will be very valuable for many listeners to hear. And then would we move to next guest?
Yes. So next is Charles Hambro. He's the co-founder and CEO at GEEIQ. I met Charles at the Metaverse Summit in Los Angeles this past October. And truth be told, I was really blown away by the level of data analytics that GEEIQ and that offers and what Charles was showing me. And he also taught me how to properly pronounce the name of his company. like I had been like talking to people, and when I was introducing his company, I was like, there's this like really cool new company that's GEEIQ, right? And then Charles introduces himself, and he's like, I'm with GEEQ, and I'm like, oh, I get it. Like kind of cool. So, but and then it's really been funny because I've had some other people. I've been on some calls, and they were like talking about your company, and they said, GEEIQ, and I said, no, it's GEEQ. GEEIQ. So anyway, had to share that. But similar to what Nic had just done, could you give everyone listening a bit of a background of GEEQ as well? Thanks.
Thanks, Dan. You're not the first person to be calling us GEIQ. It's perfectly normal. My marketing team will be very grateful for you explaining to everyone and correcting everyone listening on the call. It is GEEQ. I suppose
it's one of those things where once you hear it, it makes so much sense, right? But,
yes, it's one of those things, and it's a five-letter. It's a five-letter word, so we get a .com. That was a part of the reason of actually choosing GEEQ. But I suppose the journey started back in 2018 when GEEQ was formed by myself and two other co-founders. And really it was based on the notion that people were not just going into games to play anymore. They were kind of going into games to socialize. And that's a sort of fundamental cornerstone of what we believe at GEEQ, is that these particularly user-generated content gaming platforms are very much an evolution of social media. So if we think about GEEQ and what GEEQ does, for brands in other communication verticals like TV, print, and radio, they'll be using companies like Nielsen to understand measurement and attribution of what they do. Is it successful or not? How do they benchmark? Who should they work with to create a successful activation? And then if we think about social media, there's a whole fleet of new businesses that were created in that era, which help with measurement and attribution in that space. And I suppose the mission and the vision of GEEQ is really to support brands, but not only brands, the entire ecosystem, on understanding measurement and attribution inside what we would call a new communication vertical, which is virtual. That's what we've been doing since 2018. And as more and more brands have kind of got involved, it's amazing to see the growth and to monitor the growth in our own platform.
Sure. Well, that's amazing. And basically, like, without the measurements, analytics, and strategy and benchmarks, it will be so difficult to make these channels mainstream, like digital advertising channels. And thanks, Charles, doing this amazing work. And many brands will be using this service.
During a period of immense hype in 2001, 2002, there were many businesses and brands entering without any sort of data-led decision making. Yep. And I've always said if they were doing that in social media or TV, they get fired instantly. So I think it's a really important. Well, I'm obviously very biased, but I think it's quite an important element to any strategy.
Yeah. Without like analytics measurement, it will be just one-time activations without any kind of results, and basically brands will be doing it as a mainstream channel. That leads us to our third guest. Dan would be happy if you can.
Okay, and now the star of the show, Justin Breton. Justin's the Director of Brand Experiences and Strategic Partnerships at Walmart. And we're not going to have you explain what Walmart does today, Justin. But again, we really appreciate you being with us today. And here we are, January 18th, 2024. And the metaverse is still relatively uncharted territory for many brands and marketers. And yet Walmart has shown a significant commitment to it. Could you share with our audience why Walmart has chosen to prioritize the metaverse to the extent that it has?
Yeah, of course. But before I do, I want to say thank you for having me. Thank you to both of you for having me today, and of course the team behind the scenes that's making this live stream happen. And of course, thanks to Charles and Nick for joining me today, but also for their partnership throughout this journey. It's been really fun to take an idea and bring it to life. And I would be remiss not to say this, like, I'm here today talking about the great work of Walmart Discovered on Roblox, but there's a whole team behind the scenes that's made it happen. So thank you to the GEEIQ team, to the Sawhorse team, and of course our partners at Roblox that have helped make it a reality. Like, I very much am just the person here today with the opportunity to talk about it, but it is very much a team effort. And I always like to make that clear at the beginning of any of these opportunities. I think with Walmart Discovered and really with Walmart in general, as it relates to this ever evolving ecosystem of the metaverse and immersive experiences and virtual destinations, there's an opportunities for brands to use what's happening now to test and learn and really figure out what it is that resonates and makes sense within these new platforms, emerging technologies, to do so in a way that resonates authentically and, quite frankly, just gives the learnings today that inform a more sustainable long-term solution when it's no longer just about e-commerce, but it's about i-commerce. It's about immersive commerce. It's not only about just social media, but it's about attention economy. And Charles, I know you're probably going to talk about that later today. I'm stealing that from you, having listened to some of the insights you've shared on panels that I've had the pleasure of joining and listening to you speak. So I think we're at this really interesting moment in time where I believe we're beyond the hype of the metaverse. It's really now this is real. And there are platforms that have massive audiences like Roblox. There's new technology, new devices that are being rolled out. And so it's very much an opportunity to test and learn. And that's exactly what we're doing. Some things are home runs, others are strikes. With Walmart Discovered, I think we hit a home run.
Oh, that's amazing. And I love you were one of the first movers in the industry. And then basically brands start to experiment on this place and finding the sustainable activations, right, which gonna translate into more interesting things, and we can officially start uncovering what was happening behind the scenes of creating this amazing experience. And Justin, I know you have lots of learnings doing activations in Roblox, and can you give us how basically the idea came, right? What sparked this idea into your Walmart's team and in your head, and then how we went to the Charles and Nick's, and this will be very interesting from the early beginning.
Yeah, of course. I think we kind of have to go back 2 years, 2.5 years, which is when we went through the exercise of just sort of saying at the time, the metaverse is a thing. What does that mean for Walmart? What does that mean for the brand experiences team? How do we meet customers where they are? How do we engage with a new audience? How do we engage with a younger audience? All of these questions that we had to sort of ask ourselves 2.5 years ago as we sort of formulated our plan for 2022. And when we went through that process, we did our due diligence to understand, what is the technology that has great adoption rates? What are platforms with existing audiences? And that ultimately led us to Roblox. Once we identified Roblox as a platform, we actually connected with the Roblox team directly to sort of get an understanding of what's important to them as a platform, what's important to their audience as a growing and in a highly engaged, quite frankly, community. And that effectively gave us insights to sort of drive the concepts behind our initial introduction on the platform, which was Walmart Land. Walmart Land launched in September of 2022. I think we did some things right. I think we did some things wrong, but we approached it with let's test onto this platform. Let's use it to learn. And we used those learnings to effectively inform what became a pretty robust brief that we did in partnership with Charles's team at GEEIQ. At the time of making a decision regarding sort of the future of Walmart Land, one of the areas of opportunity that we identified, or one of the learnings through that test and learning approach, was that there was an opportunity to use or to make decisions that are really data driven. And of course, partnering with somebody like a GEEIQ allowed us to say, we know what's important to the platform, we know what's important to the community, but what's the data that's going to actually help determine what are the right decisions we can make to create something that feels really differentiated, feels really informed. And that effectively helped, again, create this really robust brief that we brought to Nic and his team at Sawhorse. In full transparency, we met with some other partners throughout that process to just understand capabilities and to understand how different partners are thinking about the platform. And obviously Nic is here and I'm not saying this to toot his horn, but we were really impressed with what we got back from the Sawhorse team. They came up with something that felt really meaningful for Walmart. They understood the brief, they understood the opportunity, and they effectively, presented us something that was, quite frankly, like a no-brainer. And it was a very easy yes, and it led to what I would like to think of as being a very successful and healthy partnership. I think like we're just getting started, which is exciting, but the process was long to get to where we are today. And so that should by no means prevent anybody that's watching today or listening today to think through their plans and say like, well, this is going to be a 2-year process for us. That's not true. There are other ways onto the Roblox platform that I'm sure we'll talk about today. But that was our process to get from potential concept to where we are today.
Wow, thank you so much. And it's so interesting because you were one of the first movers, and you actually basically didn't have too many examples to look back, and basically you went all the process of learning. And any brands or agencies listening now, it's so interesting because we already have examples to look at, and then basically we're just like learning, experimenting, and growing on the way. So thanks for the amazing answer. And I would like go to Charles. What was your kind of reaction like when you received the brief from Justin? Like, this process is also interesting, right? So from your perspective, when this big brand is coming with the brief, how the process is going?
Well, obviously, Justin and I knew each other. But we met quite a while ago, so I was aware of Justin, and we'd stayed in contact. I'd probably like to reframe it. Maybe this sounds. Hopefully this doesn't sound too arrogant, but GEEIQ doesn't really receive briefs because at the end of the day, we're not an agency or a studio which is executing on the work and doing the amazing work that Nic and Sawhorse would be doing in his team. But it really starts with a conversation, and it starts with goals and objectives. And that's the first important point. Before you've even created a brief, it's what are we trying to do here? And that's going to lead you to craft a brief that is going to make sense to match those goals and objectives. And of course, as Justin eloquently said, making sure that at the heart of a lot of this is we're not just coming up with ideas here. This is done on evidence and data of what's been successful in the past and what may be successful in the future. But of course, when Justin and I were speaking about this, I was incredibly excited about the prospect of working with a brand like Walmart. It's a real honor. And then Justin as an individual is a great and I can't take all of the credit myself. I have to credit my team at GEEIQ who supports Justin a lot, which is wonderful.
So Charles, kind of getting into that. So what is, when a brand comes to you like Walmart, what is your usual like step 1, step 2, step 3? How do you go from working with the brand to then I think you create a brief that you then put out to companies much like Sawhorse. So
yeah, so for us it really depends. It's very custom to each customer. But we start with education, and depending on the customer itself, it's how educated are they in the space? Is there a level of upskilling needed? Is the first point. But then the second point, with Justin having already activated on Roblox, the education level is already incredibly high. So this is really going into what are the objectives. And so many different brands have very different objectives when entering these different platforms beyond just Roblox. It could be Fortnite or Zepeto. But if we talk about Roblox in particular, maybe it's about reaching an audience that they won't be able to reach using other traditional platforms. It could be about expressing brand values in a way that in a 3D sense that they can't do in other platforms. For some brands, it's about revenue generation. So really nailing those objectives down first, and then going through the next point of, right, how do we craft a brief that makes sense, and then matching that with the right parties to execute on that. Sawhorse was one of those parties. As Justin mentioned, there was a few developers that GEEIQ and Walmart went to in order to see what would come back. But I would go to, this space is evolving, as Justin was saying, and some brands, especially in the early days, were entering very much on an innovation point. But I think now brands are really beginning to understand that this is actually a medium of communication. It is a social channel, just like every other social channel. The core difference here is the time spent inside these platforms are far more deep and enriched than the traditional social channels. And as a brand like Walmart, one of the things one needs to think about, and all brands need to think about really, is what do I uniquely add as a brand? How can I enrich the player experience? And I think a lot of work was done about deeply thinking about how Walmart can add to the platform and enrich the user base, which ultimately led to Walmart Discovered.
Okay, Nick, finally, you get to talk. I think both Justin and Charles had indicated that they had reached out to several developers with brief in hand, and both of them basically said that you blew away their expectations. So what's your secret sauce? What was it that when you saw the brief and then you decided what to do? Elaborate a little bit more on that for us, if you could.
Sure. So first, I have to give a lot of respect to the brief itself. It was one of the best briefs we've ever seen. And that's extremely helpful, because that's one of the biggest problems that I face is I work with clients that aren't very comfortable with the space. They don't have a ton of experience. So just identifying what the goals are, what the KPIs are, is extremely difficult. So that's where working with Charles and his team at GEEIQ is so helpful, because they get to work with the client and help kind of like build what the problem is and what the potential goals are. They don't necessarily have the solution, but that's what they need. And then also working with Justin and the amazing team at Walmart, fantastic. They have so much strong background in the space, and so they have a lot of great perspective on everything. So yeah, brief came through. It was very clear what the problem was. My team took a huge step back to think about it, because the landscape has changed so much, where brands that are activating on these platforms, when it first started, you could just establish a land. It could be brand land, and it's like, look at how beautiful it is. It's branded within the way that company looks, and it would get millions of visits and everyone's happy. That's not how it is anymore. It's nothing like that. Now it's a crowded space and people are educated. The communities there have expectations. You have to realize that you are advertising in their house. It's not like you can just run a 30-second commercial and that they're going to receive it well. You really have to think outside the box, and how you design something that's going to engage them and give them something of value. So when we approach all of our projects, we understand who the brand is. We do a deep dive on that brand, and we try to figure out, what is the brand ethos? What do they do well? What is the purpose of this brand? And then we try to translate that into an immersive experience. So with Walmart, we learned that it's all about finding the things you need in your life and getting them easily, and also adding value and making your life better. So we took that same perspective and put it into our design. So instead of saying, hey, look, we're Walmart, look how cool we are, come play our game, our perspective was, how can we help the community there have a better experience on Roblox? How can we help them find the best UGC creators, the best items, the best games? How can we make it super engaging so that we're giving back to them and adding value to their experience on the platform? And I think the idea was a little revolutionary because we weren't making a traditional game, but it made so much sense to everybody involved. And so we got the green light and we moved forward.
Yeah. Well, so interesting. And especially it's so interesting, Nic, because when you are like planning traditional marketing activations, we are talking totally different target audience and everything is testing, right? Right now, like basically many brands are kind of like taking behind the scenes and looking like, okay, should we risk it or not? We are talking about the Gen Alpha and Gen Z who are totally different. We might like some things they don't like. So kudos to you to use it. Basically what Walmart discovered, managed, it was amazing. And it leads me to next question to Justin. What was your like kind of expectations or kind of like target auditor you're gonna be reaching or KPIs? Did you have these expectations, or then basically you all together agreed on some metrics and topics?
Yeah, I think to Charles' answer earlier regarding like the process of sort of crafting the brief, like it was a very collaborative process. I think like one of the things I would encourage everybody that's exploring this space as they look to partner with brands like GEEIQ or production studios like Sawhorse is to trust the people you're working with and give the people that understand the platform and the community and the data a seat at the table. And I went into those conversations with an understanding of the platform and understanding of the community. We had learnings from Walmart Land, and those helped inform the brief. But Barney and Tom, if you're listening, shout out to you. And thank you for all your support. I very much trusted their perspective and their pushes, and it led to the brief that Nic just talked about, which I'm so happy to hear. It was a very well received brief, and it was an informed brief. And I think within that brief, what we identified as goals were informed by what we had done previously and by just general benchmarks of brand experiences on the platform, and really saying if we did 10% better than what we did with Walmart Land, or if we did 10% better than what the brand averages across these metrics, like that's a good indication of success. And I think for us, that's sort of like what we use as the baseline. But as we launched the experience and learned how the community was responding to it, we also identified new KPIs and we sunset previous KPIs, because I think I see a question here in regards to sort of like the future and future-proofing the experience. I think that's really hard to do because this space, this platform, this community is going to continue to evolve. New features are going to roll out, new expectations are going to be raised. And so while it's great to think about the future, I just think there's always going to be change, which is great because it gives brands an opportunity to change as change is happening and continue to stay relevant, continue to drive engagement. And so while we had KPIs, they changed. And as a whole, I think like we did a really good job of exceeding the primary KPIs. And from a target audience standpoint, we were very much focused on an older audience on Roblox. That's a priority to the platform. And so for us to be a priority partner to them, we also need to take their priorities into consideration. And so as you reflect back and listen to some of the keynotes from the RDC conference last year, like you'll hear sound bites regarding like utilities on the platform and people starting to date on the platform. And, we kind of were lucky to be one of the first brand experiences that really leaned into providing the community with value through utility. Of course, there's fun. We want our experiences in Roblox to be fun, but we created something of value for the community through the lens of the utility. They're talking about the fact that the platform's aging up. Our experience is 13 plus. We've got more than 65% of people coming in above the age of 18. We're connecting with a core demographic for the Walmart brand, and that's really important. And of course, we're telling our story through the lens of the community. And so we delivered on this vision of by the community for the community. As you're seeing now, we tapped members of the community to tell their story, what it is that they love about Roblox, what it is that Walmart discovered can help them do, and really leaning into this message of find your thing. Really find your thing, be it a trending UGC item, an indie experience, all of which are built and distributed by members of the community. So I know it's a very long answer and I forgot what your question was, but hopefully I answered every component of it.
Perfectly answered.
Okay, great.
No, that's so insightful. Charles, you're the data guy. So one statistic that really stood out to us was the overall approval rating. I think it's what, like 96% or something like that. Are there some additional numbers that you can share with us in regards to this particular activation?
Of that, delighted, and the approval rating, I'm just looking at the, is 96% exactly, which obviously is one metric and one KPI that's very important, but there are multiple metrics and multiple KPIs. You know, you can look at it in basic terms as number of visits, daily visits, but then you can think of active users and returning users, and depending on how you've set up your experience, KPIs will be different for different brands in terms of their objectives. So one thing I just want to say, and further to the question that was asked about future-proofing, I think a lot of people like to make this space like quite complicated, but actually it's quite simple, because if you swap that, you know, how do we future-proof Roblox, our Roblox experience, and you just watch that with how do we future-proof our Instagram channel, it's the same thing. It's just one is 2D content and one is 3D content. It changes, you know, the platforms change and evolve, and there's new features that come out. So constant monitoring and measuring and reevaluating is very, very important. In Walmart's particular case, you know, this is a persistent experience. So this is not a sort of integration, which we can talk about later, and many brands are starting to do that. That's the equivalent on Instagram of a brand doing a collaboration with Kim Kardashian for a campaign and reaching Kim's audience for a bit. Whereas Walmart Discovered is more like a brand creating an Instagram profile and continuously servicing the community with content. Well, I just want to double click on what Justin said, because it's a really, really important point. The word game in Roblox no longer exists. It's called experience. And the point of that is every experience on the platform isn't just a game. And when we go to think about brands entering these spaces, this is where Walmart's been really innovative. It's they've understood that and gone, just because we're Walmart doesn't mean we need to create a game. Actually, we've created a utility here, a tool to help users. And I think we'll start seeing a lot more of that happen on the platform. Now, the numbers kind of speak for themselves, and just talking about publicly available data, even including media and entertainment, which is, you know, Sonic, which is a gaming IP, or Barbie, or things like that. Yeah. There's over 450 branded experiences on Roblox. And as of week 2, January, Walmart Discovered is in the top 10 out of all of them. And I strongly believe that, and it's actually the first non-media and entertainment brand out of all of that stuff, which is incredible, above many fashion experiences and beauty experiences. So, and I truly think that is down to a lot of thinking about the player and thinking about the user and thinking about what they want. So that's a fun factoid I'll give you in terms of literal up-to-date data right now. It's sitting in the top 10.
Wow, that's so cool. And I would like quickly want to comment that like involving the community is the kind of best thing I loved about the Walmart Discovered. I myself played a lot of times. And this question always comes to many agencies or brand sides. Okay, we launched the experience, we have the good idea, everything is perfect. Then how we onboard the players, right? So who is responsible for this? Like Nic, Charles, itself brand is doing, because this is like the biggest question every brand is having, right? So whoever will be, like maybe Nic, you could tell us more like how this process happens, right?
Yeah, as far as onboarding, as far as the user understanding what's happening, what the purpose is. Yeah, we call that the first time user experience. So, and this is where, this is a software product that we're building. This is a living thing. This is not like a 2D linear journey that you send people down on rails. You have to say, hey, this is an immersive environment. It's fully interactive, and there's a gamified element to it, and you have to explain that to the user. And you can do that through messaging, through UI, and different methods of just communicating, but it has to be clear and it has to be done well. And it has to be received by the user the first time that they join the experience.
Wow, very interesting. Yeah, one of the most challenging parts also, like when getting users on the game. Okay, so I had one more question, which might go to Justin here. So basically, like, okay, we opened the very nice experience, right? And for many times, brands were thinking that, okay, we're gonna open the experience and that's it, branded experience, and we are done, right? So I think this question might be also good for both Nic, Justin, and Charles. So what's happening now, right? So we opened the successful experience. How much resources it takes, or how difficult it is to maintain it. This will be also, because when we have the Facebook page, Instagram page, we constantly have the social media manager or whatever, and I really see that like Walmart Discovered really kind of sustaining the experience, and would love to hear from your side how you see this going in.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and I think it's really important to like reiterate that it's like it's not a set it and forget it. It's not, it's not like here it is. I hope you like it. We're learning as we go, and in regards to are we building things for the future or trying to future proof? Like, we built something that we thought was really great. It resonated, but there were things that we very quickly realized, like, we can make this better, or we can remove this so that players can get into the experience quicker. And like, those are learnings that you only get when you have people that are actively partnering with you to understand the performance of the experience. And of course, we are so fortunate to have partners at GEEIQ and partners at Sawhorse that really are committed to the success of this experience. And I'm sure any partners that partner with GEEIQ and Sawhorse would say the same about them, that they're very much leaned into the success of the experiences that they're a part of. And so we're fortunate to have them as partners. And I think like that is what has driven the results that you have seen. With Walmart Discovered in particular, like one of the tactics that we rolled out in terms of like keeping the community engaged was really around this idea of like a nomination system. So the experience is by the community for the community. It's really all about improving discovery on the experience, really helping Roblox users find their thing. The same way in Walmart, we don't just have everything, we have your thing. And in Walmart Discovered on Roblox, it's the same idea. We've created a more immersive and curated experience that allows for people to find their thing on Roblox, be it a virtual item, an experience, maybe it's a game, but it's curated in a way that makes a lot of sense. And that entire curation process is also powered by the community. So in the experience, we allow users to nominate their favorite UGC item, their favorite experience, their favorite game, their favorite creator. And what's so great about that is that powers the flywheel of what ultimately makes it on the virtual shelves in Walmart Discovered. And actually, Nic and I were like playing around with the data like last week, just to sort of get a sense of like, how are the nomination systems working? And this is private data, but I'm happy to share it today because I think it just validates what we're doing. To date, we've had more than 66,000 unique nominations in the experience, which is really amazing. That's 66,000 people that are coming in and are nominating their favorite UGC item, their experience, whatever it may be that is a part of their identity on the Roblox platform. And they're nominating it with the intent of sharing it with the greater community. And so that is one tactic that we introduced that is sort of driving that flywheel of keeping the experience always fresh and new. Because every time you come in, there's new things for you to discover, for you to find your thing. And so it's been a successful tactic and one that I'm so happy that we introduced. And I'd love to hear what Charles and Nic think in terms of like keeping experiences like fresh and exciting. And their answers don't have to be about Walmart Discovered, but yeah.
Okay.
I think from my perspective on that, sometimes strategically brands will go onto the platform and create a limited time only experience. And there's nothing wrong with that if that strategically is meeting their goals and objectives. But the one and done thing is, if you're building a persistent experience, you would never say, I'm setting up an Instagram channel, all right, I put in my profile name and I've done my profile picture and I've posted it in an Instagram story and I'm done. Like,
Going home.
how that works. And it's so much more than that, because now this is a vessel for you to communicate your brand values or whatever it is that you're doing in your traditional marketing mix. You know, you communicate that on social media. This is now a vessel to communicate it in a 3D sense in ways that you couldn't possibly communicate it on traditional social media, and to an audience that may not be hanging out on traditional social media. So I don't want to sort of poo-poo the idea of integrations or experiences with limited amount of times. They're effective, but they're effective for different objectives. And if I go back to, you touched on something about how, you know, teams to manage all of this, you know, this has happened before. And I've heard, you know, I've heard many people back when the transition from print TV and radio and suddenly Facebook came out, and there was a bunch of people that said, oh, we can't possibly be there. It's a bunch of university students and we don't have the capacity. But now every single brand has a social media team that manages that, because it's incredibly important. The exciting part here is it turns out that these 3D virtual spaces are holding consumers and users for longer periods of time than traditional social media. And the level of engagement is far more deep and enriched than the level of engagement of scrolling past an Instagram post and just seeing it for a second. So this is really exciting if you do it right and you take it seriously.
Wow. So interesting, like new wave of like new jobs will be coming in. Like we had the social media.
There's many brands that we work with and meet that have dedicated teams that are dedicated to this new vertical, because they know, because they went through this transition back in 2008, 9, 10. It's the same thing.
Yep.
Nice. Would love to hear what Nic thinks about it. Also, like he has worked with many interesting brands also besides the Walmart, and yeah, would be happy to see his.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about future-proofing the experience, I mean, it all comes down to, like Justin and Charles are saying, it's the updates and live ops. You know, you cannot just make a one and done. It just won't work. It doesn't work with other traditional gaming that is released today. It doesn't work with social media in any way. So that 100% is true. I think if brands are very enthusiastic about wanting to have a presence and reach this audience, they have to have that commitment. You know, they have to have that monthly commitment where they are testing and learning and tweaking and changing. And that will kind of ensure that engagement and those numbers that you need. And then another thing I would say that's really interesting is that we're still in the very early days of this. You know, it's like when a brand releases a strategy, releases an experience, everyone in the community learns from that. And then 2 months later, some rules on the platform change, you know, some sort of the community like vibe changes. And now all of a sudden you're kind of designing in a different way. So marketers that are into this, they have to keep an open mind. There's no blueprint to follow. You can't say, hey, let's just do what they did, because 6 months from now, that might be totally irrelevant and not work. Right. So, you know, I would say this definitely, we're all in the innovation space, and that I have a love-hate relationship with this space, because it's very difficult. You know, you can't just make another one of the things you do really well. Every single project is like, you really have to rack your brain about what's the purpose? How are we going to make this work? How are we taking all the learnings from everything else and all the other changes, and how are we designing something unique that's going to perform well? And that changes on a monthly basis.
Wow, so interesting.
Cool. So I kind of want to like take this in a little bit of a different direction, and because one of the things, obviously Walmart has a pretty big budget in terms of being able to do something like this, but and this really is a question for all three of you. If you had to give one or two recommendations to brands who are in the early stages of planning like a metaverse activation, and I'm going to be very general here, so what would your recommendations be?
I'm happy to start with this one.
Go ahead.
I think, you know, there's multiple options available, and if we can zero in on Roblox to kind of make it easier. By the way, there are other platforms out there that do command use cases and engagement. But if we just talk about Roblox, building a persistent experience is, I would say, probably the creme de la creme of the end result of where every brand ultimately wants to get to. But you don't have to start with that. There are certainly cost-effective economic ways of engaging with the community on social media and communicating with them that way. There are ways where you can upload items onto the platform and engage with the community that way by working directly with the community. So you can work with a famous UGC creator and empower them to reimagine your brand through items. I mentioned it before, and something that we're seeing in GEEIQ, looking at the market, we're seeing a huge growth in integrations, where actually many brands can be quite campaign focused. And so that's the way budgets work in a lot of these brands. And actually, they want to just dip their toe and reach an already existing community in an experience that currently exists in Roblox and do a sort of 2-week stint. And that's a way where you can kind of dip your toe and get feedback and say, hey, what do they think about us? What do they think about our brand? But ultimately, you can lead up to something like Walmart Discovered, which is your persistent world of engaging with that space, which ultimately would lead, I believe, will lead to the biggest fruits when you start to command your own user base. Because there's a difference between partnering with Kim Kardashian and her doing an Instagram story and the story's up and then it's gone, to actually having a profile and people are following you on that profile. So you're accumulating audience of which you can continue to communicate with.
Yeah, very good analogy. I like that.
That's fun. Yeah.
And Charles, I think we're talking about Walmart Discovered, and I mentioned Walmart Land. We actually, as a part of our initial testing and learn phase with Walmart Land, partnered with an existing experience on the platform called Livetopia, which is one of the biggest on the platform, and created a Walmart experience on that platform to engage with their audience. And of course, the intent of that particular activation was to obviously engage with that audience, but also to bring them into Walmart Land. So we executed, at the time, one of the first portals prior to immersive ads being available, but it affected on the Roblox platform, but it effectively allowed for us to create something that was inspired by the Walmart brand, that fit the aesthetic of that particular experience, was very much aligned to our goals and KPIs. And it once the engagement tactic sort of was completed, the user would unlock a portal that brought them to Walmart Land. So I think that's a really great thing to bring up, because to Charles' point, it's a way in, and it's not 0 to 100, but it's a way to test and learn and sort of help identify the right learnings to inform that sort of persistent, bigger presence on the platform.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Without learning, jumping right away, it will be so difficult for many brands. And still now, things like Nic and everybody mentioned, we are in the innovation process. It will be so difficult for many brands, and not all of the brands are too much risk takers, right? So I love the recommendations, and would happy to hear what Nic thinks about it.
Yeah, I agree with what everyone's saying here. And I would just say that if a brand is excited about this space and doesn't know anything about it, I think the test and learn approach is the best way to go. And I think, as we're talking about, that can either be through an integration, or it could just be releasing some items on the marketplace, or it could be like a pop-up experience, which is you build an immersive world, you design it to only be engaged with for, say, 4 weeks. And you make a big splash, everyone, and the most important thing is the marketing teams will learn about the process. They'll learn how the platform works. They'll learn all the rules. They'll learn what the workflow is like. And then they can take those learnings back to their teams and their company, and then kind of form an opinion on what their strategy could be in this space. And I think that's super valuable. And I think that's needed for a lot of brands. Because I agree with Charles. I think, the long-term goal, if we're looking, 5-10 years to the future, is brands should have persistent experiences that are always on, that are reaching these audiences. It's just not easy to do that, and a commitment of time and energy and resources from these brands. So you don't need to go out of the gate and build that on day one. But it should be a goal that we're all kind of moving toward in the future.
A quick question for you, Justin. Obviously, you've built this on Roblox. So are there plans to, let's say, extend Walmart Discovered, say, on Fortnite or some other metaverse platform as well?
We have some very exciting plans for this year. But I shared our number of unique nominations. So that's the only insight that I will share that's private. I will keep our future plans close to heart so that when they launch, people are excited and surprised. But I think the intent with Walmart Discovered was to create something that made sense for the Roblox platform and for the Roblox community. And so as we think about showing up on other platforms and testing new technology, using emerging platforms, the intent is always to do something that makes sense for that particular platform and that particular community. And so, my recommendation to those that are listening would be to never copy and paste. Like, even if there's the idea that could translate, there probably are nuances between each of the respective communities that are enough to warrant something different. For example, last year, we launched the Cultureverse on Spatial. Spatial is it's a web-based experience. It's similar to Roblox in that there are brand experiences, there are community-created games. It spans the gamut. It's not just a destination for gaming. And with Cultureverse, we created something that was inspired by the 50th anniversary of hip hop. It was all about celebrating Black culture, and it was both a gamified experience, but also an educational experience. And the way in which we built it and the way in which we introduced it was very much for that community and that platform. And so, all to say, yes, we have some exciting plans coming. I'm happy to share that both Nick and Charles' teams are a part of them. So just know there's some fun coming. But my biggest takeaway is don't copy and paste. Like, really improve the platform.
I completely agree with Justin's sentiment there. It's incredibly embarrassing to do an Instagram strategy inside TikTok, not so, or to do a Twitter strategy for Facebook. It's just you just don't do that. So these virtual platforms are no different in that same way.
Yeah, and I would just say the word why. Marketers need to be asking like, oh, I got to be on Roblox. My boss says we have to be on Roblox. Why? What is the real purpose you should be there? What is the goal? Let's show up authentically and move the needle in a way that makes sense, not just, like Justin said, cloning something or just having a presence to be there for some random reason.
Oh, interesting. And kind of like we are going till the end of the show, but we have a couple more questions left. Very interesting one is that would you see brand collaborations happening in this space in the future? This question goes to first, like Justin. Walmart Discover is very successful, right? And then might be some brands or maybe suppliers would love to partner up, or maybe making the joint experience for a shorter period. What's your vision like? Do you see these kind of things might be happening not only on Walmart but overall in the market? Nick and Charles also can answer this question. It's kind of like industry-wide kind of collaborations.
Yeah. Oh, I 100% think that will happen, and it will happen in Walmart Discovered this year. But I will say that it has to be done authentically. It has to align with the strategy and the objective, and we can't say we're by the community for the community and all of a sudden just start funneling in brand partners for the sake of doing it. Just like you shouldn't copy and paste, kind of like in the same sentiment of what Nick just said. Like, I always say to my team, like, just because we can doesn't mean we should. And I very much believe that as it relates to be it Walmart Live, our digital destination of live shopping events, Walmart Discovered, our virtual brand destination on Roblox. Like, just because we can introduce a partner doesn't mean we should. And so for us, we'll ensure that whatever it is that we do feels like it is done authentically and it remains aligned to our vision of being by the community for the community. And I would encourage all brands to do that, to maintain a sense of, true brand purpose on the platform.
Cool.
Very good advice.
Cool. Good answer. Yeah. So we are getting close to the end. So I think what I'll do at this point is to give all three of you an opportunity to maybe make a statement. Maybe we didn't, Nodo and I didn't ask a question, but there's something that you feel is still important that you'd like to get across in regards to the Walmart Discovered experience.
So who wants to go first?
And maybe one or two key learnings or recommendations to the listeners, agencies, brands, and creators who are listening now. From each of you, at least one or two key learnings and recommendations since we are starting the year. Would love to hear your insights.
Well, maybe I'll start at being the data person. Obviously, and very biased, I'd say there's the data running through this entire project has been pivotal and very important. But I won't just say that, because actually part of the success is the collaboration point, when people work together in the right way. And I have to say, on this project, it feels like there's a great synergy between all the parties involved. So one shouldn't forget that when working with a partner, you've got to really feel the synergy, because that's, as much as the data is, that's also part of the key of the magic of all of it. So that's what I would say.
It's the teamwork aspect of it. So and kind of getting into that really quickly, Charles. So obviously you were very involved with like Justin and Walmart and his team in regards to putting the brief together and then working with Nic and his team. So so now it's like, okay, it's up, it's successful. How important then is the data then going forward, and what is being done with that on a go forward basis?
Well, that's the point of, you don't just put it out and leave it alone. And just like Instagram or Facebook, trends change, strategies change, platforms evolve, new features come on, and that affects everything. So absolutely, data is important to inform your decision about what you're going to do, and even who you work with. When it comes to a RFP process, we think about the past work of the studio we're going to work with. So someone like Sawhorse, what are the past brand experiences that they built, and what is the performance on that? Absolutely, it's on the creative brief that comes back, and have they understood that, and do we think that's right? And then thirdly, it's what is the team, and is there cadence in the team, and do we like the team? That's the data being used at the start. But actually, the real work begins is when you've released it. And like anything, to measure, you don't know if you're successful or not, if you're not benchmarking, if you're not measuring what you're doing. So there's, again, rather biasly, I'd say there's a constant for measurement and attribution.
100%. Nic, over to you.
Yeah, my advice to marketers would just be, don't be afraid to be experimental and be creative in the design of what you're building. That's what's really fun about these open UGC platforms, is that you can build whatever you want. It doesn't have to be a game. It doesn't have to be this, experience. It's kind of like a hybrid of both. And I think the coolest stuff hasn't even been built yet. So I think you approach it of like, you have to understand the community. So you need to put enough in there that's going to be relevant to them. But then you should also push to the envelope on, well, as far as from a design standpoint, what value can we offer the users there? And what can we create that hasn't been done before? So, one example really quickly is one of our clients was Aloe Yoga. We designed an experience and designed it all around meditation. And we encourage users to put down the keyboard, put down the mouse, and just experience guided meditation. And we kind of gamified that and made it immersive. And this is just kind of a weird thing. I mean, this is not a game mechanic that works, that's known on the Roblox platform. You know, you just think outside the box and don't be afraid. You know, be creative and have fun.
That's a very good answer. Love that.
And Justin?
Yeah, I'm gonna build on Nic's answer in terms of like understanding the community. Like my advice is actually to one, understand, but also to collaborate and allow the community to have like a seat at the table. Like that was really important to us as it related to building and designing Walmart Discovered from the beginning when we were live and as we think about the future. Like one of the things that we did, and of course this came after we launched, was launched a Discord channel and, excuse me, a Discord server. I'm still learning because this is new to me. But we launched a Discord server and it's currently sitting at 15,000 members, which is amazing. It is far exceeding our benchmarks. And, you know, again, like this is in the success of it is because of the partners we have in GEEIQ and Sawhorse and those that are helping stand it up and engage with the community. And they're giving us real-time feedback of what they want to see, things that they like. And I think by giving the community a seat at the table, it ensures that the work that you're doing is actually really going to resonate. And of course, if it doesn't, at least you know you do your due diligence and you're taking those learnings to inform the future optimization and change. But I think, understanding the community is important, but also collaborating with the community is just as important.
Well, it's so interesting, and I love the point of getting the real time feedback with through the Discord from the community, because on other channels, like not many like customers are writing you every hour, every day feedback on the Facebook or Instagram, right? So engaging with the community, it's so interesting. And
quick one from me, jumping off from what
go ahead.
An interesting factoid for you as I'm looking on my screen over here. It's very interesting to see that, as I mentioned, Walmart Discovered's in the top 10 of all brand experiences on the platform, including media and entertainment. But if we exclude media and entertainment, they're number one. And they're closely followed by Alo Yoga, which is that experience that Nic was discussing. Quite interesting to note, both of them do not have traditional game mechanics in there. So for people that think that the success of a brand experience is by rebuilding Adopt Me or successful game mechanics experiences that are in Roblox, that doesn't look like the answer at the moment. It's about uniquely adding value where there isn't. So
important point.
Good way to bring us home, Charles. Good way to bring us
home. So, guys, this has been awesome. I look at you three as like superstars in this industry, and you sharing your insights and recommendations, best practices is really, really appreciated by Nodo and myself, by also our entire listening audience. So thank you so much for joining us today.
And I would add that all the insights are so important for brands who are deciding, and I'm sure many, many brands will be joining in 2024 and learning and having the people telling you what they experience and sharing their learnings is the main thing which will give us major adoption in this space. And I would love to tell my listeners, whoever have not checked it, check out the Walmart Discover. You would love it. Even if you are grown-ups like myself or everybody of us, I personally enjoyed playing it. So, and I want to invite everybody to our next show on 15th of February, our guests. And as always, we will be trying to do our part best to uncover many interesting activations and behind the scenes to help lots of marketers and brands and agencies try these new amazing channels of engagement with their customers.
Yeah, and I'd like to close by definitely recommending any brands out there that feel that they could use GEEIQ or Sawhorse, give these guys a call. They'll treat you right and they'll do a really, really good job. So
that's amazing. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
launching Faction Closet.
Eltonifying something, it's making yourself different in a beautiful way.
Guys, I really think we should turn back.
Come join in on the frightening fun.
When Will sees this, he's totally gonna blow his
Lucas.
Sorry.
Je ziet ik ben op fleek. Kom uit de garage, je pull-up game is weak. Planga van katje, planga van katje, planga van katje. Dat is nog niks. Brakka van Balmin, brakka van Balmin, brakka van Balmin. Chap chap in the bando, I don't wanna look like. Dat is nog niks.